Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm super excited to be back and trying something a bit different today. Usually on this channel, I deep dive into the technical side of architecture, all the software and the nitty-gritty details. But today we're getting back to the basics and doing some architecture and urban sketching. Sketching has been a passion of mine ever since I started my architecture journey, and today we are taking inspiration from the legendary Albert Kiefer, also known as House Sketcher. Check out the link in the description below to see his amazing work and the photo I used as a reference for this sketch. Now let's get sketching. I'm starting with a very loose sketch using this trusty Pilot pen. You can find it at any art supply store near you as it's very commonly available. Waterproof ink is key here because we'll be adding some watercolor later. You can also find links in the description to the pen I used as well. The key here while sketching here is to sketch loose and trying to keep your lines pretty fluid and not as rigid as the reference photo. Now also it's a good idea to plan out your paintings using a pencil before you put in the pen lines. It's always a good idea to leave good amount of white space around your paintings so that you can let the painting breathe and the colors can be added in later to substitute. Any imperfections are fine, that's what makes the drawing human and also adds a style and character to the painting as we go. You can see that I'm also adding some dark lines and strokes, especially where there are shadows, as you can see in the reference image as well. Now let's finish up the outlines and move on to painting. Now on to the painting. I'm using some basic Camlin watercolor cakes. I'll also link in the description some of the paints that are very beginner friendly and good for these fast urban sketches. Nothing too fancy here. I'm giving an underlay wash of yellow ochre so that we have a base to start off with and there's no empty white space. Then I've started to color in the foliage with some light green first and then moving into a darker shade of green. In any watercolor painting, it's advised to start with the lighter colors first and then move on to the darker shades. Then once the yellow base has dried on the building, I've slowly started adding in some of the brown shades onto the building. I've also thrown in some red here and there just to give some rustic elements onto the painting. Now I'm just adding the red highlights, especially onto the flag element on the right and the light element on the left. This gives a pop of color into the painting and it's sort of balanced on the right and left side. Now I've started putting in the darker shades, which are the dark browns, onto the building, and I usually paint them from top to bottom. Now let's also add in the slight blue color that gives a pop into the bottom side of the building. Now finally I'm adding in the darker shades, which are the shadows, especially where the building's elements are intersecting and under the roof lines. This sort of completes the painting and brings all the elements together and adds that very important depth to the painting. Also feel free to add them in to the nooks and crannies, especially where things are intersecting like rocks or building elements. Now just some final touches here and there, some lettering on the flags and also just adding any leftover shadows to complete the painting. I'm just finishing off with some white highlights, just using the dry white like a white gouache just to give some highlights to some elements so that they stand out. It'd be good to know what you thought about the painting and the video. Please leave any feedback or comments or questions that you have in the comment section below. And as always, see you in the next video.